I'm going to be making some predictions this morning, and I assure you bad predictions abound in the world. I want to read you a couple. Despite the trend to compactness and lower costs, it is unlikely everyone will have his own computer anytime soon. That was by Stanley Penn in the Wall Street Journal. That was back in 1966, that we would not have our own computers. I predict the internet will go spectacularly supernova and in 1996 catastrophically collapse. That's by Bob Metcalf at InfoWorld in 1995. So please forgive me if I make a few bad predictions today. I'm going to try and make some good ones. The important part I want you to see about this slide is how everything starts accelerating, okay? A big part of what I'm talking about today is how much this change, how fast it's going to happen, how consistent it's going to happen. And I want you to understand it's basically mathematically driven. As things start going up that curve that you see, we call that the knee of the hockey stick curve. As things start going up there, everything begins to accelerate. So if you look at all of our sciences today, you will see that it doesn't matter what science you look at, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, they are all going up this same hockey stick, all at similar times, okay? They're independent of one another, but very similar. So the problem is that we used to think of things in linear trends, the red line at the bottom. We no longer have to do that. We have to think about things in exponential trends because it goes up that curve. And that's part of what I'm pointing out today, that we want to talk about that. I met Buckminster Fuller years ago, and he had noticed that at 1900, that up until 1900, human knowledge doubled approximately every century. So think about that. It took a century to get a whole bunch of new stuff that humans accepted as knowledge. On the average, we are now at a point where human knowledge is considered to be doubling every 12 months. So every 12 months, now there'd be people that'll argue about that, but somewhere in there. Look at the last item. According to IBM, the build out of the Internet of Things will lead to the doubling of knowledge every 12 hours by the end of this year. Every 12 hours. How can they make a statement like that? Well, that's a little bit about what I want to talk about. I want you to understand why that happens and how that happens. You know, there's an old conundrum told about a fellow that developed the game of chess, and he gave it to a king of a country. And the king said, wow, he said, I love this game so much. He said, I'd like to pay you something for doing it. He said, what could I pay you? And then the guy thought for a minute, and he said, I'll tell you what, there are 64 squares on the chessboard. He said, if you give me 1 grain of rice on the first square, and 2 grains of rice on the second square, and 4 grains of rice on the third square, and just keep doubling every square. And the king says, that seems like a good deal, I'll do that. Not realizing that that 1 doubled 64 times was equal to all the rice in the world, okay? So that's what the exponential trend represents. Let's talk about 2 that have actually happened. The first one that I love is the Human Genome Project, which was started in 1990. And it was, they got, I think, $3 billion. And the goal was to identify all 3 billion chemical units in the human genome instruction set. And people said, you can't do it. It takes a year just to do one of those at a cost of $100,000. And they only appropriated $3 billion. So how are you going to do it? And what's your goal for doing it? And they said 15 years. And they said, oh, absolutely impossible for you to do it in 15 years. So they set about going about doing it. 7.5 years, halfway through the project, they went back to the people that were working on this crazy project, and they said, how are you coming? and they said, we're doing great. We have handled 1% of the human genome. And so they took half of their time, and they only had done 1% of the human genome. And the people looking at that said, well, see, we told you you can't make it. You're nowhere near doing what you're going to do. And they said, you don't understand. We're right on track. We're going to finish. And this is because they knew the magic of that exponential trend. Basically, they were pretty confident at that point that they could double the amount of things that they had learned every year. And it turns out 7 doublings of that 1% would equal 100%. So they felt that they could make the 15 years. Well, they not only made the 15 years, they actually completed that in 13 and a half years. And today we have the human genome. And the reason that's important is because we're learning to manipulate that human genome. We have the tools today. So we've done things like cure male color blindness by taking the human genome and fixing it and re-putting it in somebody's body to do that. Well, so that was one success. Here's another one that I found fascinating. Scientists have been trying to figure out what HIV is and AIDS, how we get AIDS and HIV and all of this. And something that became important to them was to figure out what's called protein folding. How do we fold these proteins to get the results that they were looking for? And I don't even pretend to know what that was. I just know they were trying to solve it. And they had been looking at it for 17 years and still did not have a result. They used supercomputers and as much human technology, human brain power as they could bring to bear on the problem, and still had not solved it. Well, gamers, a guy that played games online happened to see an article talking about this and about them trying to solve it. And he went back to his compatriots on the gaming website and he said, we solve problems like this all the time. We do it for fun. So he said, here's something where they need a solution to it. I created a game called Folded, and I published it on the internet, and anybody can use it. So here's the address, and you can go out there. All I ask is that when you play Folded, whatever insights you gain from playing the game, you share that with the scientists that are trying to resolve this problem. And so he set them out doing it. If you look at that last line, you probably already read it, but they had been studying it for 17 years. His people solved the problem in 15 days. Think of that. Serendipity, nothing like serendipity. Two things happened here. One is that logarithmic, that exponential learning curve. But the other one is that it was the first time that I was aware of that we did crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is where a bunch of people who never would have hooked up before, if in the old days, if I would have made some new scientific discovery, I could have got it posted into some magazine. A few people would have read it. A few of them would have written friends. Little by little, the word would spread. And several years later, whatever my discovery was, it could be found. Here's a case where all of that happened within a matter of days to make it available to lots and lots of people. That's crowdsourcing, and we're going to be doing more and more of that. Well, at the top of the things that I'm going to be talking about today stands artificial intelligence. I'm going to break artificial intelligence into two pieces today because one I'm not really going to talk about, and that's the one by Ray Kurzweil and a variety of people. Ray Kurzweil is a believer that by somewhere around 2030 to 2040, we will develop artificial intelligence that is a single machine that is capable of thinking of everything about the world and coming up with new information and so forth, synthesizing it. And that is the one that you've heard people like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk and Bill Gates have all talked about. Their fear is when that artificial intelligence becomes possible, that it's like it'll wake up, it'll shake itself off, and it'll look around and it'll say, these humans just gunk up the works. I could be running a good thing if these humans weren't underfoot and in the way. So that's their concern. What we get is the Terminator, okay? So we don't like that thought that we could just be a cog in the wheel. I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence today, about programs that are developed to perform specific tasks utilized for a wide range of activities. Simplify that. Anything that you have that's electrical in nature, that is electronic today, I will guarantee you there's a bunch of engineers somewhere working on making it smarter by tomorrow. So what you're going to see is you're already seeing it. You're seeing a proliferation of garage door openers and washers and dryers and microwaves and cars that are getting very smart because they are imbued with a massive amount of intelligence. And that's going to happen more and more all the time, because it will not slow down. It will keep on running as people keep on learning more and more. We'll just be the beneficiaries of that. So we're already using it for medical diagnosis, electronic trading platforms, robot control, remote sensing. It's been used to develop and advance numerous fields and industries, including finance, healthcare, education, transportation, and more. We're going to be looking at all sorts of problems using artificial intelligence to find solutions for us. The other thing that will keep all of that going is, no, I don't want a new share. There we go. Is the Internet of Things. How many of you are familiar with the term, the Internet of Things, in my audience? Okay, a few here, great. It was a term I hadn't even heard till maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years ago. But the Internet of Things are all of these devices that are capable of being internet connected. That's the Internet of Things. And again, I say garage door openers, microwaves, refrigerators. And your answer is, why would I put my microwave on the internet? Well, if you could call your microwave later in the day from your office and get it to start up for something that you'd put in there earlier, makes sense that that could be coming. So there were expected to be, it was thought that IoT will have arrived by 2008. And it did. In 2017, we had 15 billion devices, 2 per person. We're looking at the end of this year, 50 to 70 billion devices, 8 per person. And if I look around my house, again, I have, the garage door opener. I have a doorbell that's capable of not only letting me know when bad guys are at my door or good guys are at my door, but it also lets me know I can communicate with my neighbors, and I can send a message to my neighbors and say, hey, there's a white car driving through very slowly through our neighborhood. You might want to watch out. And they get that, and they can look for that if they're listening. So let's look at some examples for Internet of Things. Healthcare. Wearable sensor detects a heart problem, calls an ambulance, and sends vitals to a nearby hospital. They're looking at a possibility where that can get embedded into a shirt. And so, again, think of the ramifications. We already have healthcare things. They're using for babies. They hook the babies up, and before the nurse can detect that the baby is having a problem, the software and hardware that they're hooking up to the baby can determine that something's going wrong with that baby's health. Same thing with heart attack. We know that getting a heart attack, getting to it early can save lives. Well, you won't detect it as early as there's hardware and software that can detect it sooner. And if it does, it can call ahead to the hospital. It can say, or say you're out, you've passed out, where you are, what your vital signs are, and they're ready for you by the time you get to the hospital. So of course, that'll ultimately be very life-saving. By the way, I've had 2 heart attacks, and one of them I almost didn't make because I didn't bother calling it in initially. I didn't think it was a heart attack. I thought it was something else. Okay, building management. I didn't realize that buildings emit 40% of greenhouse gases. Well, what if we can use software and hardware to monitor them? And so say when the sun comes up or gets hot at a certain part of the day, you can have the blinds shut, although I suspect we'll have something better than blinds. I suspect we'll have windows that we can opaque at the right time. What if you can track inventory, people, and equipment in real time? You come into the building, you get an RFID identifier, radio frequency ID badge, let's say, and from that point on, the building knows where you are, what floor you're on, and so forth. Anybody comes in looking for you, they can quickly find you. Trucks and autos. We're already doing this. I use an app called Waze on my phone, W-A-Z-E for those that have not used it. Waze is a wonderful application. It saved me from 2 traffic tickets because it tells me it's crowdsourcing information. I turned on my Waze to go to Sarasota the other day. I get a message that said 4,700 Wazers are on in my neck of the woods. I've forgotten what that radius is, but within 20 miles, let's say, within 10 or 20 miles, okay? Now, as they see an accident or a car parked off the side of the road, they call that into Waze, and Waze sends that to me if I'm near there and headed in that direction, which it knows. It knows what I'm doing. So it's wonderful feedback, all crowdsourced. Already been problems. What are the problems? The problems are people that live near major highways, but they're in like a cul-de-sac. Well, it shouldn't be a cul-de-sac. It have to be a through road, but they don't normally have a lot of traffic, okay? And there is some sort of slowdown that happens on the main road, and Waze says, oh, let me reroute you, because that's one of the part of what Waze does, and it reroutes people through a neighborhood that's not happy about having all of those cars coming through their neighborhood. Well, Waze makes that more efficient, but it could have happened other ways in the past anyhow. Each auto, we have a variety of sensors in our auto. And you have, since I think 96, there's a fitting that it hangs down under your dash, and you can go get a thing for $40 that you plug into that fitting, and it will tell you, instead of just getting your engine oil on, you can plug in with that fitting and it will tell you your problem is you got a bad water pump or whatever. So what about extrapolate a little further into the future, where what it does is your car says to you, you're traveling, you're coming back from a vacation, and your car says to you, you know, your water pump is going bad. And so I took the liberty, I called your mechanic. He's already ordered a water pump. They'll have it there this afternoon. And you have a 10 o'clock appointment tomorrow morning. Take your car in, and your mechanic will go ahead and swap out water pumps for you. Those kinds of things are, again, I'm asserting that they're all coming. They're in one form or another. They're all headed our direction. Finally, I mentioned monitor our environment, water and air. And boy, wouldn't the people of Detroit wish that they had intelligent water monitoring several years ago. That might have saved them a lot of troubles, okay? So that kind of thing. Internet of Things personal. Wearable tech, Fitbit And many, actually probably several people in the room have Fitbit. I have a smartwatch that does a similar kind of thing. Augmented reality, that was Google Glass. It was pulled off the market, but it's actually been hidden. Manufacturers are using it. The problem was it was too expensive, and it didn't solve enough problem for people like you and I to go out and pay $1,500 to have a pair of those. However, the price will come down. They'll get better. They'll do more things. I picture that you're doing assembly line work, which we won't be doing in the future to begin with. But think of the days of Lucy and Ethel on the assembly line wrapping chocolate pieces and just blowing up in general, much to our delight. Well, what if you were doing something on an assembly line that required assembly of the stuff that was very important, that for whatever reason was not done by a robot, it's done by you. And if you're wearing the augmented reality, those are the things, was like a little prism inside of one of your glasses. And it will notice everything though. So if you miss putting a key part in at some point, it will remember that, and it will tell you what device you have to go back and work on to fix that problem. So that's one of the things with it. Virtual reality is where you use a full headset. And we haven't figured out, in my opinion, what to do with these yet. The gamers love them because they get a completely different environment that they can work in and play in. And your problem with that virtual reality is once you've been in a set of the goggles for 10 or more minutes and you take it off, you need 10 minutes to readjust to the real world. So that's one of the problems with it. So don't go driving. Don't take off your glasses and go driving immediately. They were looking at contact lenses. They were going to put glucose monitors and in contact lenses, along with a chip that would a radio transmitter that could call out that information. It has not worked out, and it's probably not going to work out because, as it turns out, there's enough that the eyes simply are not a good measure of glucose. Okay, so we use, instead, I have one of these that I wear on my shoulder, and my phone talks to it, and that's how I get my glucose. But I no longer stick myself 4 times a day for that information. Speech translation earbuds. We're looking now, these earbuds are they're only $220 or $230, but basically with a pair of them, you can travel to Spain. You give somebody there who speaks only Spanish one of them, you keep the other one. You can carry on a conversation, and real-time speech translation takes place. And the price at $220, $230, just not, it's not important to us. And finally, electronic fabrics. Once again, a shirt that is capable of diagnosing that you're headed into a heart attack problem and calling ahead and doing something for you. Those kind of clothing, that I don't know about a shirt exactly, but it could be a pair of pants, a belt might be the right thing. We'll find out. Things will go. Internet of Things for the home. Thermostats. Well, we have Google Nest. They didn't develop it. They bought it, but they even put cameras in there, and you can also communicate with it while you're traveling. So you can have your house cool down when you're getting close to home. Do it by sending it a message to Nest. Refrigerators, TV sets, kitchen appliances, washers and dryers, garage door openers, digital assistants. The bad part about all of this stuff is it all must be connected to the internet, which is a good thing, but it's a vulnerability. It means that security is always going to be an issue with anything that we connect like that to the internet. And you say, the other thing, I've gotten a question in the past, I said, why would you have an a refrigerator that connects to the internet. Sears built an internet-connected refrigerator 10 years ago. I saw one in the store. And I thought at the time, I thought, you got to be joking. Would you pay extra money for that? Well, you wouldn't back then. But in the future, let me postulate what could happen with one of those. One, I think they're beginning to do already is they're putting cameras in the refrigerator. So you can contact your refrigerator from your office and look around to see what you have for tonight, okay? But imagine where you bought some steaks a while back, and when you bought the steaks, they have an RFID chip, radio frequency identifier, built in the packaging of the steaks. And it knows everything about that. It knows how much it cost, where you got it, when you got it, and more importantly, when it's going to expire. When's the last safe date for you to eat this? So you're at the office and you get an email or a text message from your refrigerator. And it says, that meat you bought last week is expiring tomorrow. But I know tonight is your poker night with your buddies. And so I've taken the liberty of ordering a case of beer. Stop by the store and pick it up on your way home so that you can take care of that. Now, you would not, here's the thing, if it came down to expense, I would venture to say most people would not even pay $50 to have that, okay? But it's just going to be built in as a matter of course. It's going to evolve to that is what I think, what I expect to happen. Finally, I mentioned digital assistants. The four big ones that are out there are Amazon Echo, better known as Alexa, Google Home, that is, Siri, and Cortana, okay? All of those, we get, Siri, of course, is via the smartphone. Google Home and Amazon Alexa are about the same kind of thing. But I got to tell you, you use them, when I first got it, and I thought, I don't know if I'm going to use this for much. What I like about it is I used to set timers for everything in my house. So I had timers in like 3 rooms, and I used to turn on the timer, set it, but it's just so much easier. Alexa, give me a reminder in 5 minutes, and bingo, it takes care of that. If you have, with Alexa, with the Amazon Echo, the base unit was like $130, but then you get smaller units for $50, or at Christmas time, $35, and they communicate amongst each other. So you can now use it as a communication device between rooms. And you just tell it you want to broadcast a message, and you give it the message, and it broadcasts it to the other player. So I believe, if I got it right, this Christmas, these guys were the largest seller overall. People love them, and once they get them and get used to them, they really do like them. Internet of Things for business. We use them to improve decision making and to understand our customers. It used to be that we sent questionnaires out and we asked people questions about what car they would like, what they want their microwave to do, things like questions like that. And one of the things that they found out was customers lie. Okay, if you're in the showroom and you got a husband and wife there, and the salesman asks the husband what car did he most want to see, he tells him, "I'd like to see that SUV over there on the corner." If his wife isn't there, "I'd like to see the Corvette over here. That's what I want to see." So they just lie. That's part of the deal. They lie. So we're moving away from that. Now what you get is people that are we're finding out exactly what they do have and how they're using the products that we have. And with smart products, we can tell how they're being used. So we learn from them. So that's where we collect the data, and then we make decisions based upon that. So therefore, we can deliver them new customer value propositions. We can improve and optimize their operations. We can generate an income and improve the value of their business. So that's the kind of things we're looking at doing with Internet of Things imbued with artificial intelligence. I'm going to mention a couple of game changers. One of my favorites are drones. I should tell you that I'm woefully incompetent with drones. I have 4 of them, and I can't fly one of them because I haven't put in the time. I haven't done the work. Recently, I bought a $20 drone for my grandson. Okay, and you see him on TV, and it's amazing. It only, instead of you guiding it, you turn it on, you set it down, and it's all you got is one button, and the button only has 2 states: fly, come home. And so you hit the fly button, and it takes off, and it goes. Now, it's got 2 infrared sensors in the drone. If you move your hand close to it, it senses that, and it moves away from your hand in the opposite direction. Okay? It said could be run by a 3-year-old. That's who my grandson is. And I thought, you know, if he could run it, maybe I could. Maybe there's hope for me. And they're so much fun. And at $20, it just, you know, it's not going to deliver a pizza. So, however, we're working on that. When I first heard of all the people that wanted to use drones for package delivery and pizza delivery and all the things they wanted to do, and I thought, you know, there's no way that you can have all those drones out there. I pictured this universe of just drones flying every which way, but I didn't realize that we're already giving those drones artificial intelligence. They sense when they're near other devices. They can stay from each other. Let me tell you, they gave drones a blueprint for how to build a building that they wanted. And then they gave them building materials that were like Legos. They didn't, what's important here is they didn't tell them how to build it. They just gave them the directions for what they wanted built. And the drones figured it out. And there's a video of them assembling that building on the internet. I thought that was really cool that they figured that out. Well, if you've got a high tension tower currently, you know, they have to be inspected. You have to send somebody out there who walks up that rascal and then inspects it. Now they'll start to use drones. They'll fly the drone right over top of them and take a fast look and get, you know, and then they'll only send somebody up when they need repairs. How about to save lives? Well, they've already done it. They've already, they've got a drone that will deliver a defibrillator. So if you've got somebody hiking and they're nowhere near where they can get help, as long as they can get a phone signal in to call somebody and say, we've got somebody with a heart attack, and they'll key in on it and they'll fly the heart defibrillator out to that area. And I don't know, and they're so easy to operate. It's like, it's got like 3 things that you do and bingo, you got it. So I believe, if I could be wrong, but I believe that they saved 1 life at some point in the past. Deliver packages, involve children in science. What kid will not want to be flying his own drone? And they probably already have them. Make a movie. I have friends that made a movie using a drone. Normally, in order to get the overhead scenes, you rent a crane. You get a crane for a day. You send the crane out there. You send somebody up in the crane, and they take that. Not my friends. They bought a $1,500 drone, and they did all their aerial shots using that $1,500 drone. You can't tell that it wasn't made in Hollywood. They made a movie for $50,000, which probably would have cost several $1 million had they not had that technology available. For sport, if you ever want to see what kids are doing, there's a thing called esports. And today's the day, today and tomorrow, they'll be having drone races on TV. watch one of those. You will be amazed that anybody could fly anything at that speed competently, but they do. They have to go around a course, and they have a course. They have to fly through things and around things and all the thing. And I don't know, it's probably like 160 model miles, but I mean it's very awesome. And to monitor elephants and whales and a variety of animals. And so that's one of the things that we'll do. We can use the drones without having to send people there. Drones can be sent in our stead and monitor without freaking out the animals that they're looking for, you know. So that's one of the things that happens. I got to at least mention CRISPR. How many of you have heard of CRISPR? Okay, just a few. All right, CRISPR is something that we've evolved, is my understanding. Please, I hate to be bringing misinformation. My understanding is we evolved CRISPR ourselves. CRISPR is able to scan our own genome and look for mistakes, and it's able to correct some of those mistakes. Obviously not all of them, or less people would have genetic disease. Okay, but once we found that CRISPR was a potential tool, and we do now, and of course, we have the power because we learned the structure of the human genome. And so we now can go look at the genome. And so one of the things they've cured, I'll mention first, is male color blindness. In particular, it has a particular gene misstatement, I guess I should say, that they know to look for now. And they can go find that, and they use CRISPR to go in and snip out the bad section, and they go back and they repair it, and then they use CRISPR to put it back in, and the color blindness is cured. We only do this for men. I see the women just wincing. It has something to do with, it is the male version of this. I don't know why. But I guess I don't think that women have color blindness. They're not inflicted with it as much as men are. So anyway, it worked with men. So we're looking at removing malaria from mosquitoes, eliminating a patient's cancer, treat muscular dystrophy, treat HIV, develop new kinds of drugs, treat blindness, edit humans. And somebody did this recently, and I didn't go looking, but there's a lot of people very upset about it because, you know, we're afraid that we'll look at, gee, it'd be nice if humans had 4 legs instead of only 2. So why don't we add 2 using gene editing? Who knows what kind of crazy stuff people will do out there when allowed. So currently you're not allowed to do those things. However, somebody did. You know, there's always somebody who's going to break the rules. I'm going to end up here just by mentioning these game-changing technologies. Big data and machine learning, they're there because we can, what that means is we gather so much data, such massive amounts of data from today, and we use artificial intelligence to help us sort through and figure out what's going on with that data. And machine learning is part of that. We won the first ever Go tournament, which is Go. I have no idea how to play Go in this country. It's supposedly one of the most complex games ever developed, and the Chinese love it and they play it. And so they had their guy, their key Go player, they had him play IBM, who developed a machine to play Go. And I'm telling you, it's impressive. It's in a room. It was in a room that's bigger than a football stadium, with massive screens where you could see all of the things going on along as the players. And we beat them. We beat them 4 out of 5 games. And it was a real shock to the Chinese. Supposedly, it woke them up because they said, wow, look at what America's doing with artificial intelligence. So since then, the Chinese have said by 2025, we'll equal what you Americans can do with artificial intelligence. By 2030, we will beat you. So we know what they're shooting for. I'm hoping that we're firing back, okay? Virtual reality, augmented reality, I already mentioned those. I mentioned crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. I mentioned crowdsourcing. Crowdfunding is the way of, you need money for a project. If you can convince enough other people that they want to be invested in that, you can do that through crowdfunding. And the Internet of Things, I've already mentioned. Sharing and borrowing. We have a sharing economy, or we're developing a sharing economy. Uber and Lyft share rides. Airbnb shares a place to stay the night. Okay, so that's coming in very importantly. I would mention that when I'm talking about this stuff, and you can sit there and think of, well, I remember reading this article where somebody did that and it went way off out of bounds. You know, every new technology that we develop, in my opinion, will always have bag and baggage that comes dragging that bag and baggage. What we do is we find out what that baggage is, and then we do something to get around that, in which case something else is going to happen. But that's a constant force that we have to change, is what are we going to do here? Blockchain, I mentioned blockchain was developed because cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrencies needed a back end that would work so that they could work, and blockchain was developed to do that. However, blockchain is not used only for money. It's going to be used for voting. It's going to be used for, if you can imagine where you go. If you remember, they bought romaine lettuce went bad a few years ago, and it caused a bunch of people got sick. So they threw out all the romaine lettuce that came from a particular area and said, don't get any of that. But they didn't know where the romaine lettuce came from. I expect in the future where you're going to see things like you'll buy a pear. There'll be a sticker on the pear. You'll look at the pear, and it will tell you where that pear came from, who sells it, what it's been treated with, and what kind of things has it been treated with. And you'll know now if something goes wrong or somebody gets sick because of that pear, they'll be able to quickly track it back to a suspect group of pears or a pear tree, or that way. So blockchain will become very key in our future. Again, search intelligence and swarm intelligence. I'm just going to mention search intelligence. Have you noticed that you go to put in search today, and they know what other people are searching. So when you start to enter your search, it figures out within a short period of time what you're likely to ask, because they're looking at millions of other people who are also entering searches. You're going to likely enter one similar to what they're searching for. And finally, I mentioned the voice assistants, which I already talked about. And John, if you want to, we can go on to questions now.
Well, we're almost out of time. Excuse me, but do you have a short question or a short answer about somebody's concern that the security issues of the Internet of Things?
Do I have a short answer for the security of things? I don't have a short answer. I believe from now on, security is always going to be an issue, and it will be a constant battle, because while we're always looking to protect our stuff better, the bad guys are out there always looking at better ways to hack it. It will be an ongoing battle.
Mm-hmm. When you were talking about search intelligence and swarm intelligence, did you specifically mention swarm when you were talking about all the people that get the stuff together, or is there something else about swarm? Somebody asked.
I didn't mention swarm intelligence. Other than I said the word, and then I thought I better not go there. Describing it is another problem. But basically, I would say this: we can develop swarms of things. They can be whatever you want. Swarms of mosquitoes. Why would you develop a swarm of mosquitoes? Well, you could if there would be mosquitoes that wouldn't infect people, but would take the place of mosquitoes that would. So a variety of ways. Swarm intelligence is using a swarm of devices to figure out how to make changes in the world. And one of the ones I mentioned is that we these drones that manage to work as a team with nothing more than a plan to what the end product would look like, and they worked as a team to build that end product. That's the swarm intelligence that I'm talking about.